city manager.
You did?
No, the Wednesday night meeting is we're reviewing.
Oh, that's
right.
I
That's
like
it.
it.
Yeah.
Keegan made it very dark.
It's good.
And things. I like it. It looks good on you.
Yeah.
I like this with my hair. It's just hair.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so low maintenance. I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's my dog.
I knew it was something to do with that, but I can't remember.
My coworkers, 5 kids. Well, it's like my coworker's wife. Excuse me. Wow. I'm like, you were so brave. She was great. But I'm like, you were so brave. Why did her daughter do that? Just for fun? How old is her daughter? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But I need to Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I don't remember. I am forgetting. I know what I saw yesterday. I'm a little under the weather, so my head's like cloudy, and I'm just like, oh. Up for a little while. Come back. Well, we'll take it easy tonight. Yeah, we go easy. Okay. Hello, how are you? How are you? Good.
Good evening. I think my
Does anyone have daylight savings hangover?
but I and the city office had gone. The city attorneys. I saw that. That was very helpful. This is in drafts. Just hoping I don't think so. I mean, I don't mind if there's a second one that went. Right.
You can look in your sent files.
Yeah, see if it went. Is that my junk mail? Yours.
You again? Time no see.
Rosie.
It's like old home week.
Yeah, that's a while back.
Yeah. You know, he's written a children's book about fire department.
He's on the fire pension board now, but he missed the last one because I think
Long time no see.
I'll have to ask him about
It's like
that.
treating you.
That's cool.
I
Is it in
can't
our
complain.
library?
I
I haven't had
asked him to get a copy. I haven't double checked.
Very fun.
Modeling?
Yeah, I thought that would be
Cool. Are you going out to eat a lot?
flaked out on me.
fire chief.
But we got it all done yesterday. Lucky and I got it done Saturday and Sunday. To the grand coming Wednesday during the blizzard.
Was he fire?
Perfect timing.
Perfect. I just went, really?
No,
Like, I
fire.
sold
Yes,
granite.
Yeah. How is this possible?
Gosh.
Why is this possible?
Well, it's going to be beautiful in no time.
I know. I know.
I really looked at my list. Okay.
And I can't wait to have a
I mean,
picture.
we could just
I'm tired of
add that.
living out of my bathroom.
That was hard for months. Oh, ouch.
Somebody's asked for it.
Well, I had a bar,
What I was going to do.
and I tore the bar out.
In order,
Okay.
And then
you go down.
everything in the
wanted
kitchen,
to
the bathroom. It's like, got a spare bathroom.
So hard
The
to
coffee
function
maker.
in the kitchen.
I was going down.
Refrigerators in the living room. It's like
All discombobulated.
Pretty sure she included that.
plates,
Sure.
Everywhere.
plastic cups is what I've been using. It's like,
And then I was.
Welcome everyone to the Englewood City study session. It is March 11th, and Member Cuesta will not be here tonight. He has been called away on work. So we will begin with everyone else seated. Our first item up tonight is a small cell licensing. Assistant City Attorney Dune Comer is here to present and discuss the small cell facilities and cell network license agreements between the City of Englewood and various telecommunication companies when such licenses become or come before the City Council. Thank you for being here.
thank you, Mayor and City Council, members of City Council. So before you is the small cell license facilities and network license agreement. And essentially what these are is, this is something that's been coming for the last 4 or 5 years to a lot of municipalities around the country, and they're small cell antennas, so about the size of a telephone pole or a light pole with a small antenna on top. And under the federal statute, the Telecommunications Act, as well as state statute and FCC regulations, municipalities cannot deny the use of their right-of-ways for these types of structures. So what has been going on is between the Colorado Communications Utility Alliance, as well as other communities, as well as CML, we've all gotten together and prepared a license agreement or proposed license agreement for use with these providers. And a lot of the information was contained in my council communication, so I will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions for this? Councilmember Sierra.
Do we happen to know how many of these we may see around the city?
We don't. They have used signal poles, city-owned signal poles. In other communities, we have 63 of those. But again, the license agreement restricts that in the sense that they would have to, these poles would have to pass the engineering standards, and they can't interfere, the antennas can't interfere with anything we have on the poles. So if we have a camera up there that's monitoring traffic, or if there's an emergency system, for instance, the reflectors to change the light from green to red for emergency vehicles, it can't interfere with that. This does not cover any of the XL poles. That would be a separate agreement between XL and the telecommunications provider.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
So this was a concerted effort by CML also, so all of the municipalities are using the same agreement?
Not all of them. They may change them for their communities. I took what they had and wrote in quite a bit for indemnification of the city and insurance provisions so that we were protected completely. There are no costs to the city for this. Everything is with the telecommunications provider.
And so is $200 per pole per year, is that a standard?
It's a standard, but it's also set by the FCC regulations.
Okay,
So we
can't
don't
change.
We can't change that. No.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? You're wanting direction from us tonight too to bring it forward?
Yes, I was hoping that what I was thinking about this, I'm not sure how many of these are going to be coming forward in the future. But I was going to recommend possibly going with an administrative approval instead of bringing them to council for each and every single one. But I need a consensus from council on that.
Council, have any perspective on that? Councilmember Berentine?
Wouldn't that come to us for a vote that we would do it that way? Bring something for us to vote on it?
It would be, originally we were thinking approve it by motion, but again, we're going to have the same agreement over and over with all of these providers like Sprint or AT&T or Verizon. So.
And then, maybe I should.
Use mic, yeah, thank you.
Maybe I should ask the city attorney. So if you're setting something up where we would do whatever comes to us, wouldn't that agreement that we're going to handle it that way come to council to be voted on?
Probably. I think what
Thank you.
Dugan's looking at is the way what we have right now is an agreement for you to approve. But I think that the concern is that this is one more repetitive thing that we don't have a whole lot of choice in. And if, with your consensus, we would look for a way to do this administratively through community development. At this point, what we have is this contract, and this contract would have to come to council.
Is there another way to formulate the agreement or the contract or so that council can take a look at it and say that this is the standard, we're okay with that, and then bring it, or is that what we're doing?
That's what you're doing. That's what I was
But we're not
asking.
agreeing to do that here. It would come to council for us to agree and vote on, because we can't make that decision in study session. That's all I'm asking. Is that?
I could certainly bring a blank contract to you for a vote of approval to go forward at a regular
That
meeting.
would
if you-
state that we're handling these things administratively.
We
So
could
that
do
we
that.
could have some documentation from the council saying that the council has agreed that this is how we handle it, and there's documentation for it. I'm not disagreeing with doing it that way, just.
Certainly. I understand. I understand where you're going with that.
I think if hearing you correctly, you're saying that you would be in favor of it so long as we brought it in. I mean, you would want us to go and decide in there that we're going to have an administrative process for this, in addition to this document that you gave us, which we also need to approve in there, in the regular meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Calmer?
Yeah.
That we
that's-
have to approve that as well in there, but she's asking also, let's have that conversation about whether it's administrative or not in the regular meeting and vote that.
Yes, that's
along.
how I'm hearing
Think?
that.
Yeah, okay, make sure. Councilmember Sierra.
Just a clarification, so each of the providers would have an agreement, but would each of the providers be able to access the actual technology? Are we talking about just the license agreement, not necessarily the pole?
Actually, it's called co-location, and that's encouraged under the federal regulations. So if one provider puts up a pole, another provider can come in and ask to use that pole, so long as they're not interfering with each other's signals. And they have a right to do that. But we would encourage co-location to keep the number of poles down, because we don't want to just have hundreds of poles everywhere.
That's what I was getting at.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Would there ever be a point where we would want to limit? I mean, would we have the right to limit if every pole in the city is becoming populated with?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have a good answer. I can look that up for you. I'd be happy to. But
Okay. I mean, I'm okay, I believe, with the administrative piece coming forward, but I would like for council to be made aware when we're doing that we would get a report.
Great. I think those are some good ideas. I'd be supportive of those as well. Bring it forward. I like that we're doing this. I do think it would be weird if they were on every single poll, and I think there'd be some testing going on as to whether they're healthy for us all to at the same time. Councilmember Berentine.
I would like, if there's any change, that it just doesn't stay administrative. So whatever we get presented to us with the current regulations that are there and guidelines that we're doing this, if there's some significant change to this, whether the feds are going to allow people to do something that's drastically different, I would really like to have it come back to us and
Certainly.
see what's going on, if that's okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Just to touch on the number of polls, Denver already has this in place, so they're not seeing a huge influx of polls. They use existing polls, or they put up a poll, and the poll is there's design standards built into this so that they will match what's already out there, so they don't stand out. You know, you've seen the huge cell towers. These are much smaller. So that
Great.
helps. But
Thank you. It looks like, I think we have agreement, I'm going to assume agreement with others to bring it forward, both of those different aspects, the administrative, how it would look and sound, including that it would, if anything major changes, that it'd be brought back again. So it's not always a done deal. And secondly, the contract itself, which I think looks good. So I know you probably wanted some feedback on that, but,
thank you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the Paseo lease renewal options. Economic Development Manager Darren Hollingswoth is here to present the use of Paseo for outside seating.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of City Council. This evening, we're here to receive direction from Council on how Council would like to proceed with the use of the Paseo for outside seating, specifically using a lease to extend this agreement or using a street furniture option. At the February 25th Council meeting, there was a discussion about this topic, and Council requested a copy of the street furniture and occupancy permit that's included in your packet. Zomo and the Brew on Broadway, their leases are set to expire on April 1st. If Council wants to extend a lease option to renew this as a preferred method, we would need direction this evening from Council on a lease term and a lease amount. This matter would be scheduled for the March 18th meeting. If Council chooses to go with the street furniture option, no further action will be necessary. This would be a staff level process at this point. Staff has been in contact with both business owners. Both prefer the option of a street furniture permit. Our comments were, and we're in full agreement with that this creates a fairness and uniformity among businesses that currently operate in a similar fashion with outside seating in the public right-of-way. One of the city's goals is to encourage outside seating in the public right-of-way, and Zomo and the Brew on Broadway are operating consistent with this goal. That's all I have as far as comments, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions. Look forward to receiving your direction.
Great, thank you. Questions and direction. Councilmember Berentine.
Thank you very much for working with businesses on there to get some equality with this whole thing. It kind of got out of hand a couple of years ago. So, and I know that caused them some angst. And I think both businesses pay a little bit extra on their rent because they have the accessibility of that, as well as the accommodations that have to be made to the building. And you know how expensive that was for both of them. I'm very grateful that they're using it and that you've gone out and worked with the businesses to get that communication to us. I greatly appreciate it. For me, I'm still sticking to the permit so that that it's equitable and that we get some people out there and get some activity. And thank you very much for the work you've done on it.
So Councilmember Berentine, you're wanting to go with option 2 then? You said we're sticking with the permit.
The street.
I think I made it pretty clear. That was pretty clear.
It wasn't clear to me, so tell me which one it is, option 1 or 2.
Again, the permitting for the street furniture, again.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Martinez?
I prefer to go with option number 2 for consistency and fairness purposes for all the businesses and staff as well. I think it'll be easier to manage one way of doing things instead of 2.
Councilmember Sierra?
I too would prefer option 2. I think the confusion with Councilmember Berentine's response was just that option 1, the current option. So option 2 would be the way forward, just because of just keep it simple for all businesses within Inglewood. So thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
I also appreciate your reaching out to the businesses and keeping it fair. So thank you very much for all the work you've done on this and bringing this forward. I also agree option 2 is the best option.
Councilmember Wink?
Thank you, Mayor. I think we have consensus already. I'll add my word to it. Thanks for your work, Mr. Hollingsworth, with option 2 for the equity in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's clear, and I really do appreciate the work you've done this as well. And I think what option 2 does is allows for any new businesses to know that everyone's sort of got this fair level ground, and I think it honors what it really is. So we're making a change. We're not staying with anything. We're moving forward in a new permitting process with option 2 for furniture. If bring that forward, it sounds like we'll have a chance to vote on it.
So no further council action.
Oh, that's
is
right. You don't
necessary.
have to do
So
action
will
on
be a
this.
staff
We probably should send a letter, if we could, to the chamber and ACE, just so that they know that we just did this.
Happy to.
If we could.
Happy
just
to.
Because they
Absolutely.
have,
Happy to.
they might not all know that we've been doing this.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Third up is our procurement discussion. Finance and Administrative Services Director Maria Sobota is here to present and discuss the procurement policy round 2.
Hello, City Council, Mayor. Boy, I can say, while Sam is getting the presentation up, it's certainly nice to be sitting here when there's sunshine
I
outside.
know.
I'm much more alert and ready to go. Not as tired.
It's nice.
Thank you. Just press the button, Sam. Okay. So before we begin talking about the revisions that were made to the grid that we presented on February 25th, I just wanted to let you know that, since I've been the finance director, one of the promises that I made to you was that, I'd be looking at processes and I would be talking with the team about consistency in using the policy correctly. And I believe we've made headroads. I can honestly say that the systems that we have in place would certainly support the information that we've shared with you on the 25th and that we'll talk about tonight. But I wanted to make a case in point. Last year, we processed approximately 50 requests for proposals. With just 2 months under our belt, we have already processed 22. So if we stay at that clip, we're looking at just under 100. Now, I'm not saying that, it's the same number. It can't be a linear equation to calculate that. But it gives me assurance that we are implementing consistency throughout the organization. There's a clarity and an understanding about the current policy that's in place. And that made me feel pretty good when I heard that we're moving along. We are hiring another member to assist in the procurement area. They start March 18th. Which was well needed, and it's in the budget. It was in the budget even last year, and we've just made an offer. So we'll continue to reinforce those policies. So I wanted to make that point. So when we came to you on the 25th during the study session, we talked about the presentation, and I really didn't change it too much. But tonight, we want to talk a little bit more about some of the changes that you asked us to make, and then determine next steps, including the City Council's approval timeline for the ordinance. I'm not certain that I need to go through why we decided to change. I think I've just talked about the understanding, interpretation to simplification, the adherence to the charter, municipal code, and policy, and determining the reasonable level of risk considering our available resources and controls in place that I've just talked about, again, to address your concerns and those raised by citizens. So the primary considerations, just as a reminder, are to look at the signature authority thresholds in comparison to our neighboring municipalities, our sealed competitive bid requirements, our emergency purchase requirements, change requirements, the mayor's signature, and then property sales. So those were the primary things that we reviewed as we looked to updating the policy. So what I'd like to do now is pass out a revision of the grid that you first looked at last time on February 25th, so let me do that. Thank you, Dorothy. There you go. I'll let you get those first. Those were also included in your package. So I just want to talk about the changes that were made. I'll refer to the columns by number. So when we talked last week, or a couple of weeks ago, we had a lot of discussion around emergency purchases. So in column 7, so it's the second column from the right, emergency purchases, the changes that were made are highlighted, specifically the request that council made to include language that the mayor or the mayor pro tem would call a special meeting within 24 hours of the emergency for City Council to make a decision regarding emergency purchases exceeding $100,000. I added the language exceeding $100,000 in that paragraph, but then also up above because that's consistent with what we're recommending for other purchases tonight that come forth before the City Council. So I want to make sure I mention that. And then also included that approved items would be included as an informational item in the next City Council packet, just as an information item. I'm not certain that that's absolutely necessary, so we can talk about that. Okay. The second change related to change orders, and this is something that I have further thought about since the last meeting. This wasn't a recommendation that you had made, but if we have a purchase that's over $1 million or $1 million, 10% of that is $100,000. So I believe, and I come with that recommendation, staff believes that we would bring forth any change order that was greater than $100,000 as well, regardless of the percentage of the total project, which is how it was written originally. So we felt that that would add a greater constraint on bringing a change order forth. Okay. And then today, when we were reviewing a draft ordinance, and I will tell you that the ordinance will be written in a way that will reflect the language as you see it here when we bring it forth. But when we were talking about the ordinance, we felt that in columns, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, so the greater than 50,000 but less than 100,000 or equal or greater to 100,000, in the row bids and quotes, we did not include language the last time I brought this forth that said select lowest bid or provide optimal source justification. But we believe that that really should be included in the language, because if you'll recall, there were a couple of items that were brought forth to you earlier this year. I remember specifically the South Platte that brought forth an item that they did not select necessarily the lowest bid, but they selected a product that would work better in the plant, and they gave a good justification. We also we have to consider whether or not the product that we're purchasing will work with systems that we have. So in cases like that, we may select to bring forth for approval an item that isn't necessarily the lowest bid, but that provides the optimal value. And it would be up to the requester to come up with a justification to support that. So that is something that I would like to discuss tonight, whether or not you would be willing to include that language in those two columns. And it's similar to the language that is in the next column. It doesn't replace anything that's currently in the box. It would be added to what's in the boxes. So we would continue to require Schedule A for both of those with a sealed bid and publication and contract, but we would include language that we would select lowest bid or provide optimal source justification in those boxes. So those are the items that I wanted to bring forth today that were changes from our discussion last time. And I wanted to open it up for discussion that you have related to the overall grid as we move forth in preparation of approval of an ordinance.
Thank you. Councilmember Barentine has a question.
There's some concern that we haven't delved into the reasons for why the policy, the previous policy, the current policy hasn't been being followed, and that we have violations of the current policy that we have. And I'm a little concerned about trying to mix that with just we weren't following, so we're just going to up it. It was inconvenient, or it was too low, or it was difficult, or it was time consuming, or whatever the issue is, it doesn't get resolved and how we weren't following it previously. So I don't think we've explored enough where we were going wrong for the concerns that have come up for the public. The biggest example is the $236,000. That would be 2 times the new amount, which is 4 times the old amount and the original amount that was in there. One of the reasons that I'm concerned about this is that we haven't identified problems that we were truly experiencing with following the old policy, is that a huge piece of this is that this is how the public is made aware of how we're spending our money, as well as council, and that there's a thoughtful process in the expenditure of their money, that we're doing bids, that we're handling the finances as best we can, and that these then come back up to our attention and the public's attention as well. And so I still have a huge concern with, you know, times 4 the amount of money to 100,000, when we haven't, I think, fully vetted out the reasons why the policy was not being followed previously.
Address that statement?
Sure, please do.
So it's difficult for me to kind of oppose a statement that a council member is making, but I do believe in this case that we have identified a lot of the issues, if not all of the issues, and have determined that a simplification like this grid will make it much more clear to staff what is required. I think looking at a charter, an ordinance, a policy that might have conflicting language, which I did mention last time, there were some conflicts in some of the language. Making it clear by including all of the purchases, not just some of the purchases, or including exclusions. The charter currently includes exclusions. So there was a lot left up to interpretation by staff, right or wrong, and it really truly is the procurement officer's position, my position, to enforce this, quite frankly, with the city manager's support and with the support of my procurement administrator. And I'm sitting right outside of the procurement administrator's office now, and I'm hearing and seeing people go back and forth, and I'm accessible for questions as it relates to the policy. And I would absolutely say that we are committed to following a policy. There is no doubt. And we have the support of an interim city manager and the city attorney in enforcing what you're seeing in front of you. And we talk about it at every director's meeting. So I understand the concern. Because of past history, we've addressed the emergency procedures in acknowledging that you'd like a special meeting. And I know that I'm asking for your trust, and I appreciate that. But I believe we've made significant strides over the last 6 months, and do have my commitment to make sure this is enforced. So,
Interim City Manager would like to make a comment.
I just wanted to add on a very specific note that the current policy in charter language makes exclusion or exclusions has different thresholds for capital purchases. It has a different threshold for enterprise funds, and what this does is make everything consistent so that there aren't, matters of interpretation. It doesn't exclude professional services or technical services. So I think those areas are tightened up. It is our contention that this is a more restrictive policy in many ways administratively than what we've had in the past. So thank you for considering it.
Councilor Martinez.
Thank you. I was going to touch on a couple of things that you just mentioned, why I like it. It is much more clear, and I think it will resolve any questions, concerns from staff and the public. And I like that it's not grouped by, type of purchase. I think that is really confusing, and it's much to keep track of. I think this is a lot more clear by dollar thresholds. I just think it makes a lot of sense. And I am supportive of adding in there select low bid or provide optimal source justification. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I do like the addition that we came up with last time about the emergency purchases and calling a meeting. So I really like this as it is laid out now. I think it's going to be a lot more clear and easy to follow, and just a lot more clear and consistent. So I'm very supportive of this.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
I appreciate what you've brought forward, and I'm very thankful for that. And I have gotten some phone calls with the public about the same concerns. And I understand that all this history happened before you were here. Does the buck actually stop with you, or does it stop with the city manager if the policies get violated?
I think it stops with the city manager. The ordinance, the charter says that it's a city manager or designate.
Right. I appreciate that. And so this is no reflection on anyone here. But the past history is in 2016, the policy got changed, and we assure you all that we're going to follow the policy, and then it doesn't happen. So I understand why there is some concern with the public, and I like this. Now, so is there not going to be a procurement policy manual? This is it?
Go ahead.
Okay. There will be an ordinance that reflects what is written here, and this will be actually just the ordinance plus the grid will be distributed to staff to follow. But as the document that you saw, the July 2016 document, included not only policy but administrative procedure. So there will be an administrative procedure document that will include the details that are really the purview of staff. And the majority of the information that was included in that was related to how to put out a competitive bid, sorts of things. It wasn't policy in nature, so it will accompany this, but it will be distributed by me to staff with the city manager's approval.
Thank you.
Sorry, did you have yours on? Oh. It's not on. I don't think it's working.
No battery.
Please, City Attorney, speak.
Just briefly, I wanted to say how pleased I was to see this, because externally it may be difficult for you to see the conflicts, but internally there was a struggle with, is this material or is this a product? Is this capital, is this not capital? I disagreed with the previous city manager about the emergency purchase policy, because emergency purchases were made without my knowledge. And then if there was a contract, it landed in my lap, and I had to figure out, you know, do we race the contract through and not get it correct, or do we slow it down and then it takes council longer to find out about an emergency purchase? I hate that. What I want is to be really clear to everybody. It does not matter what you're purchasing. It does not matter who you are. This is what we follow. And if there is no provision for the city manager to approve an emergency purchase anymore. That's just totally taken out. If it's an emergency purchase, it goes to the city council, the end. And some of the things that, to keep this clean and not overwhelm staff, who's the ones who are going to be looking at this every day, some critical elements that we know are built into it aren't there. For example, under emergency purchases, you will see the emergency purchase again. You have to, because it's when the contract comes back. But what you all know is it takes 4 to 6 weeks to make the contract fit state of Colorado law. And so you won't be surprised 4 to 6 weeks later when you get the contract, oh, was there emergency purchase? You've approved the purchase and you know that's going to be coming along. So I just think that this adds a level of transparency and clarity. It adds several restrictions that are currently not in place that I really appreciate. And one of the things that Maria S. has done beautifully is she's taken this language and come back over and over and over again to the language charter. And I write a draft ordinance and she comes back and says, wait a second, let's look at charter, let's look at your ordinance. Is this going to be clear to staff? I might read it this way. And I'm just really, really happy with the language that she's come up with. So from a legal point of view, this is going to make my life a lot easier.
Thank you. Councilmember Barentine.
The requirement for an emergency purchase to go to council was pretty clear originally, that it had to come to council before in order to allow somebody to make an emergency purchase. So I'm not seeing, I have a couple of questions, if I could, but I'd like to ask the city attorney. You said that there are additional restrictions in here that you like. Could you point those out, please?
Yes, and you can tell I'm getting a cold and trying to rumble through all of this.
It's all right.
But one of the things is, let's go back to emergency purchases. You felt that it was very clear that emergency purchases had to come to council, but the previous city manager did not read the language that way. So in this, the way it's been written, there's no more confusion. It comes back to council.
What's the language there that you're thinking is clear?
Emergency purchases per charter, however it's written there, mayor or mayor pro tem will call a special meeting within 24 hours of emergency for city to council to make a decision. Whereas the way the current city, and I'm doing a lot of this from memory, but the way the current policy manual reads, it could be interpreted that the city manager approves emergency purchases. That's how the previous city manager interpreted it, and now doesn't matter who you hire in a couple months. This says it comes back to council. The purchase orders in the current policy, it's a little vague about when we have to do purchase orders. And we had a big staff meeting about 8 months ago where I sat down with all the directors and I said, we need documentation on every single purchase. And one of the ways that Maria S. has brought that into place is if a purchase is basically greater than the amount you can put on a P card, it comes back with a purchase order, an RFP, a contract. There is a wonderful series of documents that she's got in place. She is really putting the screws to everybody about finding ways to get RFPs and RFQs out for services. And we're having to think outside the box and be imaginative to do that, to meet these standards. So off the top of my head, those are some of my examples.
Interim City Manager would also like to address. Do you mind listening from her?
I just want to clarify. So you think that this language is clearer about council having to approve it, although I think his interpretation was way off the mark, but you think it's clear about council having to approve prior to an emergency. And the second thing you brought up was that you believe we should have documentation for all purchases. Is there any reason that you believed we didn't have documentation for all of the purchases previously? Do we not have documentation for every dime we spend?
I think that the new finance director's policies are putting multiple layers of documentation on everything, and I truly appreciate it. I really can't have the argument with you about whether the previous city manager's interpretation of emergency purchases were correct or not correct. They were his interpretation, but I'm not comfortable with that. I think if it's an emergency purchase, it should come to council, and there shouldn't be any questions. So I really like the way she wrote that language.
Yeah, I was agreeing with you on that one, but I appreciate your clarification on the second. I'll ask the questions. Go ahead.
Okay. City Attorney? City Managers?
I just wanted to add that the documentation is easier, more transparent, and easier to verify for the city manager because of advances in technology that we've invested in. The purchase order requirement is new. I mean, we have documentation on what we've spent the money on, certainly, but requiring that purchase order before we order a good or service is a new requirement in many of these areas. And the technology allows the approval authority to see that document to verify its validity before we approve a purchase, which is something that we didn't have in place in the past. So I think we're going to be even more efficient, partly because of technological improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
I appreciate.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make sure that other people, that I'm just looking, no one else. So go ahead, Councilmember Barentine.
I appreciate that you're looking at this and that you did the work to try and address some issues that have been going on. It's been difficult, and it's been embarrassing at times to have to go through some of the process where we're doing something after the fact and feel like council has no choice in that, and the citizens don't be in that position either. So while I appreciate that we're putting some new processes into place, probably that it's concerning that they were not, but I am not comfortable with quadrupling the amount. I would like to see how this new process works, and whatever process we put in place, if people don't follow it, then we have a problem. So as we're switching things over, I would be comfortable in doubling the amount of money and making everything consistent at $50,000. But I think going up to $100,000 is a little bit of a slap in the face to the public that's had a huge concern. We need to give them a little bit more opportunity to see that we're going to move things along and follow a new policy and figure out what we're doing so that we don't have this continuation of problems. but the 100,000 I think is excessive at this point. But I do like the work that you've done to try and resolve some of the issues that are going on. I just don't agree with the 100,000. I think that's excessive. I think it's excessive. If you have a broken system, let's show people that we can fix it, address it, and then once they reach a level of comfort, then we can figure out whether that's going to be doable and see how this works. And I think doubling it brings everything consistent with our enterprise funds, then we just put it to 50 and everybody's consistent. So the concern I have about this, trying to make the spending of money more expeditious, is a bit of a concern to the constituency. I mean, they want us to be thoughtful about spending the money, not necessarily always efficient in spending it, and they want to make sure that they know what's going on. And so I think I could meet it halfway with the 50, and that would bring your consistency to it. Some of the other comments, like I said, that they weren't being done before, that's concerning. POs and making sure there's documentation and extra levels of making sure that there's an authorization for purchases should have always been in place. So as we're going through a new system, I'd like to see that kind of and revisit it and see how this is working at 50, but it's up to council.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. I am comfortable with the 100,000 threshold, especially, seeing as everything outlined here and as it relates to looking through the lens of surrounding jurisdictions. The approval levels that the other communities have are quite a bit higher in some cases. Commerce City is 250,000, Nevada 150,000. I'm comfortable with the 100,000 threshold.
Thank you. Councilmember Sierra.
Just a couple comments. First, I guess I'll ask a question. So does the new purchasing procurement policy also include items that have not been appropriate for within the budget? So,
No.
so anything that hasn't been appropriate within the budget would still have to go in front of council regardless of the dollar amount?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So just a clarification, just because it wasn't written within the documentation, but I assume that it would come in front of council regardless if it wasn't appropriate
If
for
it's
in the
not
budget.
appropriated.
Okay, so then in terms of the select low bid or provide optimal source justification, I'm okay with also moving that to the other two columns, over 50,000 and over 100,000. And I'm okay with the work that has been done with the procurement policy overall. And just for the statement that you just made is that we do have budget conversations in the fall, in the summer and the fall leading up to. So everything that's coming forward to council during the year are items that have been appropriated in the budget. So I think it does give the citizens visibility into what we're spending money on. And I think for that reason, and also with Councilmember Martinez, also municipalities around us are also having a higher threshold. And a couple with even greater than $100,000. So I think just the simplification of the procurement policy makes sense.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
I actually agree with Councilmember Barentine about starting out smaller. Part of the problem, Littleton has a different threshold than we do. Littleton is a little bit bigger than us. Commerce City is quite a bit bigger than us, I believe, and as well as Nevada. I would like to, I like the changes. I would like to start out slower, and this budget process, I've been through a few of them now. We do not have a line item budget, so it's not totally transparent. We see the bottom line. And so while I like the changes, I'm not saying that $100,000 is not reasonable, but I would like to start out slower.
Councilmember Martinez.
However this shakes out, whenever we approve 100,000 or 50,000, whatever it is, how soon would it be implemented with staff? I'm sure there's going to be some kind of rollout process or something? Do we have any like idea of time frame for onboarding?
Can I address that? Yes. So the plan would be, after today, bringing forth an ordinance in the regular meeting, and once that ordinance is approved, we would begin the dialogue with the staff. I will say the directors were very instrumental in assisting me in putting this together, and a lot of these are already in place. The more restrictive measures, we're already putting them in place. We haven't changed the thresholds, we haven't changed the approval process, but I'm so serious about these other things that need to be in place that we've already started to implement them.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Sobota. I too, as our city attorney mentioned, I very much appreciate us going through our policies and making updates and tightening language and parameters that allow us to make good policy as we move forward, both administratively and us here on council. So I'm very grateful for the additional language and for the layout and this different sort of view into understanding these processes and procedures. So I'm completely in support of this. Thank you.
I too, did you want to say something more? Go
To
ahead.
add, if I could, I wanted to address some of the comments that were made before. So I think Councilmember Sierra and actually Mayor Pro Tem Russell talked about the line item budgets and whether or not we bring things forth that aren't in the budget. So I'd like to let everyone know the contract summary form, approval form that accompanies all of the contracts that you see has been updated, and in there we are very specific about the line item that the monies are coming from as it was approved in the budget, and it also shows what remaining funds are left after that particular contract is approved. So there are a lot of details that are included in there to reassure you that the monies are available and were budgeted with the budget. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Point of information.
Go ahead.
So have there been changes made to that also? Or it's been that way?
So I can address that. So the information was included, but again, it was somewhat confusing. So we inserted an Excel spreadsheet that actually shows the division and the code, the fund, the division and the object code with how much money what's in the fund and what is available after the purchase. And we've also started to include for capital purchase the project form, which I don't know was always included in the past. So some slight modifications.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
But that's only included for the stuff that comes to council.
That's correct.
So we
but-
would be minimizing the amount of information that council would get, because now, I mean, quadrupling is a lot. So there would be a lot of contracts that wouldn't come to us that before we were at least being made aware that it's part of the budget and that it had been budgeted for, but we wouldn't be seeing that now, only for things over 100,000.
So I can address. So one of our commitments to the council is that we would produce a quarterly report that would include all of the purchases that were made, and that you would be able to see if there were items. And again, it is a trust factor, but I have to supervise the individual who actually puts the purchase orders through, and we are very diligent to make sure that things are in the budget before they go through. It can't be, there are layers of approval that we've set forth on the signature authority line where the department director, the city manager, and also a member of my staff is ensuring that the dollars are in the budget. So there are layers of approval in the system that we're laying forth here. To determine whether or not it's in the budget. We can't procure services that aren't in the budget. I guess that's the best way we can put that forward. You can't. It doesn't work. So,
Thank you. I'm really thankful for the work that you've done on this. You know, we in 2016 started some good work on procurement. It needed to be updated. I think we learned some things in the last 2 years working with that. We've discovered some things that are not clear still. I think staff have done a great job of trying to figure this out. We are operating under different leadership right now, which also helps because you have new eyes on everything. And we will yet have another new manager that will give us some new eyes on things. So I'm pleased with us moving forward. I have always been surprised in constituents that I've talked to, and I talked to a number of people this last week about the 100, well, actually in the week before, when you first brought this forward, people were asking me about the 100,000 because it's interesting how people believe the city operates at a much higher level. I think it's 250 or even more. So they're shocked that we're talking about $25,000. So I'm very comfortable with 100,000. I think it fits where we are and who we are as a city. This is appropriated money. This is not, as you mentioned, Member Sierra, it's not appropriated money that does have to come back to us regardless. So I'm fine with moving this forward. I like the added language. You will develop a bit further for the columns 6, 5, and 6, or is it the language?
If I can address, so
Yeah,
in
please.
column 4, you can see it says two written quotes, and then it says select low bid or provide optimal source justification. So it's the section select low bid or provide optimal source justification that I will include in columns 5 and 6, same row.
Okay.
And I won't remove anything that is currently there. So it's an addition.
Okay. So that's the added language in each, just moving it over, copying it. All right, great. I'm really supportive of that as well. It makes it clear. One of the things I really like about this grid, it's sort of like a checklist tick off for you all to know we hit something here. This is the way we do it. It is clear. Councilmember Barentine and others are concerned about the past. I think this is addressing the past. It hasn't been clear enough. And we probably I know that we've had varying degrees of understanding of it from historical past, that some thought this, some thought that. The reason why we have so much on the regular agenda is because it was not being followed in a number of different ways in the past, before Manager Keck came even, and certainly before our city attorney came, who started to see things in a much different way than past folks. So I appreciate the work. You've taken some bold moves to put us more clearly into where we said we wanted to be to begin with, and then improved on it. So I think we have enough consensus to move it forward. We'll talk about it at a regular meeting once again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And I love the Maria S. the way you all keep track of each other. We really don't need a break yet, do we? We'll take a break out to this next one, okay? Item number 5 is business licensing. And here to speak about this, is Maria Sobota and the tax audit supervisor, Heather Driscoll, and talking about the business sales and use tax license requirements. You might actually get out when it's daylight. And maybe go sit on the Paseo, which is still in daylight.
We don't want you to smile too much, though.
Just make sure you each have the microphone.
She doesn't want to sit too close. My daughter has the flu.
Oh.
I'll try not to breathe on you. You're good. As it was mentioned by the mayor, I'm here to discuss requiring sales and...
Yeah, it still needs to be
even
closer, unfortunately.
Gotta love these microphones.
There you go.
As it was mentioned by the mayor, I'm here to discuss requiring sales and use tax licenses. We are here to obviously to discuss all businesses to have a sales and use tax license.
little history. This was first brought to the City Council study session on September 10th. And then per that meeting, it was also presented to the Alliance for Commerce on October 3rd, as well as the Greater Inglewood Chamber of Commerce on October 16th. And then I also brought it back here on November 26th. A few examples of licensing that's around the Denver metro area is a sales and use tax license, which is one form of a license that we have. There's also specific business licenses, which is another form that we have. Those could include food trucks, pawnbrokers, trash haulers, auto dealers, arborists, the list goes on. And then also business registration, which is what a few municipalities have. Currently, our code only requires that retailers obtain a sales and use tax license with us and not a business license. I feel that there's been some confusion, that the terms have been kind of interchangeable, and I'd like to clarify that. We have, per our code, Title IV specifically talks about a sales and use tax license for retailers, and then Title V is our business license code, and that is for the ones that I mentioned previously, auto dealers, food trucks, those type of situations. So there is a difference, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. But our code does subject all businesses to use tax, whether they are a retailer or not. The reason why we should change and require all businesses to have a sales and use tax license with us is when I met with the Alliance for Commerce in Inglewood, they stated that it helps identify and recognize small businesses. It will provide a number, type, location, and size of the businesses operating in Inglewood, which is beneficial for economic knowledge. It will align us with other Denver metro jurisdictions. It also confirms that businesses are operating in approved areas and are compliant with the tax laws. It also contributes towards the sustainability and infrastructure of our city. We have a couple examples. Example number one is that currently we have a city department that is trying to send out a flyer related to if they have a material spill, what to do so that, it doesn't get into our water, it protects the water sources. However, the only business knowledge that we have is what is available to us via our licenses. And so since only retailers are licensed, it's not a complete list of all businesses that I can provide to this department. So some will get the notice, but unfortunately some won't, because we don't have that full list of who's operating within our city. Example number two, this is a real life example. This was taken by our code enforcement. These are chemical barrels relating to concrete leveling that was taken within District 4. This was pointed out to us from a citizen. They were concerned about fire danger, safety concerns, being next to toxic chemicals. These actual specific chemicals, when mixed, if you notice on the previous slide, there was A and B. When combined, they expand to be over 100 times what it is when you put it together. So one little drop, 100 times. Imagine those big 55-gallon drums. That's obviously a huge concern for first responders. If they don't know that that's there, it could be very dangerous. We technically have no recourse for a business license since they are not a retailer. If we did, we would have let them know in the licensing process that a home is not zoned for that type of business. In this case, the business/residents were very receptive to being contacted by both fire and code enforcement, and they moved the chemicals as well as the business vehicles that were parked out in front of the house to a proper location, and the case was closed by both fire and code. Again, there are a lot of benefits for us to change. It will provide us a full list, recognizes small businesses, puts us in line with other jurisdictions, make sure that we prevent the chemical situation in example number 2, and it will help contribute to our infrastructure and sustainability. our proposal and next steps are that we would like to bring forth for your review and approval a proposed code change in April. And with that, our goal is to require a sales and use tax license for all businesses effective July 1st of 2019. With it, we'll offer a 12-month amnesty period for them to obtain the license. This is a change from the prior 6-month based off of the feedback from the prior 2 study sessions. And in addition, we will conduct an extensive outreach to the community via social media, Herald, community events, also send out a postcard. In addition, I looked on the website, and I know a lot of you council members have a meeting with your constituents. Sorry, it's a tongue twister. At least every couple months, both myself and my staff would be more than willing to attend those and speak to any questions that might be raised by your constituents in an effort to answer any questions that they might have. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Council members, questions, comments? Councilmember Martinez.
I just want to say thanks for everything that you've worked on with this. I know it's been a long time coming for us to kind of finally get to a place where we can make a move. And the example you provided is a perfect example, and I think that just illustrates one of the reasons why we need to make this change. So thank you for that. And I also really like that we added the 12-month amnesty period. I feel like that's an appropriate amount of time to get everybody up to speed. So I'm really supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barentine.
I really don't want anybody in the community to believe that we are unable to address an issue like this that may be a health and fire issue because we lack a sales and use tax license. I disagree with that being used as an example and with the comments on public documents that somehow sans the sales and use tax license, that somehow we are not capable of handling that. And I do appreciate that you clarified that both the fire marshal and code enforcement were able to take care of this. It seems to be extremely visible, and so I'm concerned that a citizen had to complain about this and it just wasn't taken care of through code enforcement, patrolling our 6.5 square miles here. But I do appreciate that you clarified that the proper authorities were able to take care of that, even though we don't have the sales and use tax license now. Because I don't want people to think that we're that unsafe or that castrated in trying to handle issues that can be very serious like that for an explosion or fire. I'm a little confused why we wouldn't look at the example of doing a business license first for all businesses before going to a sales and use tax, which I believe is already, has your department not changed the way that they've been doing the sales and use tax audits already?
Could you clarify that last question, please?
I mean, I've talked to several businesses that have been audited that were told that they had to get a sales and use tax license, even though they were manufacturing or they were in the industrial area, and then this kind of opened up, some other audit issues for them. Have you not already been changing the way you've been doing it?
We have been encouraging businesses that have a use tax liability to get that license, since they do have a liability for use tax. That is, at this point, we don't have to, you can voluntarily remit this. And so when there is an audit, we have been encouraging them that way, if they were to get audited again, they don't have penalty and interest on an assessment. It does encourage them to comply and remit those taxes, whether they're a monthly, quarterly, or annual filer.
It can feel a little strong arm to them. I mean, I've gotten some pushback with this because you have a lot that are not subject or did not believe that they were subject to sales or use tax, and they didn't have to have the license, and then they're being audited or talked to, and if there's a certain period of time, then that opens them up for an even larger audit, and I don't want to just strong-arm people to give us, be making deals to give us money on there, but I appreciate the work that you've done on this. I think that I think this might be a little bit more onerous to a lot of businesses, and just really would like to get a little bit more information in the future. I really would appreciate the examples to be a little less drastic, because it concerned some people when they went through the documentation to think that a sales and use tax could protect us, or that the people who are supposed to be protecting us are not. So I appreciate your clarification later.
Can I address
You're
that?
fine to address if you'd like.
Thank you very much. Regarding pertaining to the barrels, with how our system is set up right now, when a new business applies, submits their application, it goes through community development, building, South Platte, water renewal partners, the fire department. So all of those departments are notified that this business applied for a license, and so they're able to check at that point, okay, is it zoned for this? Do they have this? Do they have that? And they have to sign off on it before the license moves down the process. So our sales and use tax license kind of holds a dual purpose. And within that, when I was discussing with Maria about, did we want to do a business license? Did we want to do a business registration? Did we want to do a sales and use tax license? What was going to be our best course of action? The reason why I went with the sales and use tax license recommendation is because it appeared to be the one that would be the least confusing. Since we already have the Title V specific business licenses, those are the food trucks, pawnbrokers, auto dealers, arborists, trash haulers, I was concerned that saying that every business has to have a business license would just confuse those. And then what do we do with the ones that are those categories that I just mentioned? How do we address those? So do we have them have two separate business licenses, or how do we specifically go about that? Another consideration was the business registration. However, that would be another process and another license, and so in an effort to consolidate and make it easier, it appeared that having a sales and use tax license was going to be the most efficient as well as less confusing for our businesses. And so that is why that was the recommendation that was made.
Thank you for clarifying that. I hope that everybody was listening, that maybe was misunderstanding some of that. Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
That was my discussion with Maria Sobota, which route we would like to go.
I have some concerns about the Alliance for Commerce in Inglewood. When you came to present to them, I know that at least one of them, maybe a couple, were concerned about, and in this presentation I didn't see this, what benefit is it to the businesses to register with the city? I mean, I see in here why there's a lot of, it's really great for us, but I don't see how it benefits the business. And here, well, I will not forget what this one woman said is, what are you as a city doing for us other than just having your hand out, put money in our hand? And I am very concerned that we are not business friendly and we are not doing business friendly things. I would like to slow this down somewhat. I'm hoping that when we get a new city manager on board, that perhaps they will have the ability to bring this city together with the small businesses. The small businesses are really generating the sales tax and the major portion of the revenue in the city, and I am very concerned that, I mean, one thing I do believe that when you came to talk about this, one of the reasons I believe that they were for registering small businesses was just to register the businesses, so we'll know who is there. And so I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to use this as a revenue generating issue. So that is my concern with this. I'm not opposed to registering businesses, but I'm a little bit concerned that we would use it at this point as our main goal is to generate revenue. And I agree, I do believe there are codes in the city that we can deal with hazardous materials without having people registered. And I think private individuals could have chemicals in their yard that they don't even have a business either. So those are some of my concerns.
Well, if
Like to say
we
anything?
have a list of businesses that are operating, we're able to increase awareness, community outreach, those type of items. We'll be able to, you know, send out the flyer that is needs to go out regarding chemical spills and what to do in those situations. Also, it will encourage a relationship, hopefully, with them and us, that they can reach out and feel that they can contact us with any questions. Because I do agree with you that it appears, and what I hear is that it is kind of a broken relationship with both citizens and businesses in the city. But if we have this relationship, and however it may come about, this is one possible route towards that. And so, you know, we're bringing it forward. Ideally, you know, the citizens are paying taxes, and if, like I mentioned, the code does require that businesses are liable for use tax, and so if they're not licensed, and then is the cases that were mentioned earlier where maybe they're manufacturing and they get assessed on use tax, they're paying penalties and interest in that situation. And so if they do have a license and we're able to reach out to them and let them know that these are the type of items that are taxable, and this is how you file your returns, and feel free to let us know if you have questions. And here's our tax seminars that we offer every month, that even though we host them every month, we barely get any attendance, but we still host them. We answer so many taxpayer questions, but hopefully we can bring that all together and eliminate the need for so many people to be confused, as well as reduce the penalties, which I know does hit a business when they have penalty. So we always offer a first-time audit penalty waiver. And those type of items, we're pretty generous with the waiver of, you know, a paper filing fee, or if somebody's like, you know, I missed my return this month, we're willing to do that type of stuff. But they need to know that they have this liability, and that's one thing that having licenses will help reduce that confusion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sierra.
Ms. Driscoll, you covered a lot of the communication aspects of this that I saw, so I appreciate that. I'm also in favor of moving forward with the language that's stated. I do concur with Mayor Pro Temp that we do need to do a better job in terms of making it easy for the business to do business here in Inglewood. But that's a separate conversation, and it's probably going to be a council request that I make, probably not tonight, but the following week, just to get a little bit more information on it. But in terms of what is in front of us today, I do agree moving forward with the selected language.
Thank you. Other members that haven't spoken yet? Okay. Councilmember Berentine?
I think this is a tax. I think it's an increase in tax. I think it's a bigger burden on our businesses. I think it's us not being friendly, especially to smaller businesses, and it puts everybody in a position where they have to file. It puts more burden on us. I'm not even sure if some of the money we're going to be collecting would be advantageous for that, and it opens it up for a lot heavier audits for people that weren't even in the purview of having to pay a tax like this. So I think it's a tax increase. I think it's a burden on the business, and I'm absolutely not for this.
Councilmember Sierra.
No, I was going to say, so I think this is a tax increase for people that aren't paying the tax, because it is required today by all businesses.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Could I get
All right, so
clarification for that comment, please?
a point of information, is that what you're asking for?
Sure. Per our code, if sales tax was not collected at the time that a transaction happened, use tax is liable and due. So at that point, let's say hypothetically you purchased a computer online for $100 and that vendor did not collect tax. In that case, the business should accrue $3.50 and remit that to the city of Inglewood on their return to us. And that is what a use tax is.
So the clarification I was asking for is, are there people who do business in the city who do not owe sales and use tax?
That very well might be the incidence
Okay,
if
thank you.
they purchase everything locally.
Well, there are people who can do business that are not liable for the tax. Not every business owes that tax. Okay.
I would say in my 11 and a half years of auditing, I've never, except, let me apologize, once I came across an audit with a zero liability. But more often than not, there are companies that purchase, especially in the day and the age we're in. A lot of purchases are made online. We have a lot of unincorporated jurisdictions around where city taxes are not collected. And in that case, that would be something else where tax is due. And so it's it would be highly unlikely for that to be the case.
I have not had that experience, but thanks for the clarification.
Councilmember Sierra?
No, I was going to say the clarification on the use tax, it's owed when you're buying something outside of your jurisdiction, correct? If you were to buy the computer in Inglewood, you would be paying the sales tax. But
Correct.
If you're buying it in Littleton and Littleton has a different sales tax rate, that delta is what you owe to as a use tax.
Yes, the incremental tax.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else, any perspective from the two of you, since you haven't, well, I think Councilmember Martinez, you have.
Yeah, I've
Councilmember
spoken up on this. I'm in favor of moving forward as it is.
Councilmember Wink.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for your great information and for answering all these questions. I think it's pretty clear, and I'm in favor of moving forward with these changes as well.
All right, thank you.
Mayor.
Councilmember Barentine.
It is the interpretation of what you're doing as an auditor that I've gotten the pushback from, so that the strictest amount that previously was that if somebody's paid tax on it, they've paid tax and that they're okay. It was the items that they did not pay tax. Your interpretation of it, I understand, is your interpretation, and that's why I think that this is an additional tax, because that's not the way it was being handled before on a fairly regular basis, and I've been doing accounting for 30 years, so I understand where you're coming from as an auditor, and that when you interpret it the way you interpret it, all of us owe you tax. Everybody owes the tax, and that's why I believe it's putting a burden on the businesses, this new interpretation of it and the way that we're doing it, and I think it's going to cause some problems, and I think it's going to hurt our business districts.
Councilmember Martinez.
I just want to add one more thing. This first came to us 7 months ago, I think, so it's been quite some time.
I believe it's 6.
Yeah, 6, 7 months ago, a long time ago, and I think, I'm ready to move forward.
Thank you. I also am ready to move forward, and I think you've done due diligence on this. I actually can't figure out why we wouldn't do this. There's so many clear things that make it very, I think, transparent about what's owed, what isn't. It helps businesses in the long run. It helps to give connections for us all with each other. It just doesn't make sense to me. In some ways, the example that you gave in slide number 2, it's a bit of a cheap shot against code on that, but I could see under what cases that would happen if they were not registered. People wouldn't know it even existed. So how would someone see that on someone's business lot or something and think anything of it until there was a problem? So I really appreciate that piece. Actually, it's the one piece where I thought, if anything, for the safety of the community, particularly if we're talking about more manufacturing areas, which tend not to be the ones who might think that they need to register, that this is really a much wider health and safety and protection for the businesses themselves. I really like this concept of being able to have much more information, and registering of people so that we can have a relationship with them. Right now, we don't have the possibilities for those relationships if we don't know they exist. And providing all kinds of the training that is offered out of this center for folks, even thinking of the small business program that we have here would give them that opportunity that they may not know because they may be so small. So I am curious about our continued communication with those that this will work with. It's not a new tax, it's a tax that already exists. People won't have to pay if they are a zero audit, and I appreciate your background in that area in public service, so I trust that'll work.
Could I add one thing to that?
Sure.
I was recently contacted by Darren Hollingswoth up in Community Development, as well as Brad Nixon, who is the new chair of ACE. And they asked if we were able to get them something, because they were calling each business that they got on the new business list, and it is time consuming, and so they asked if we were able to get email addresses or mailing letters, or a mailing address, which would be beneficial to them. And I was actually able to generate a report, which is a few more steps on my end, but if it's able to help ACE so that they can make that connection with the community and these new businesses that have moved in, I'm more than willing to do it. But by doing that, and I let them know, this is just who voluntarily gets licensed with us, as well as retailers who are able to get licensed, but ACE is making that effort to reach out and form that relationship for the alliance. And this is a prime example of, now they have email addresses and letters so they can send out. I know they have a new nice packet that they're making, and they're making that connection. And so if we do move forward with this, then when new businesses get registered, ACE will have a full list of them, and so ACE will be able to also utilize that to make those connections, and hopefully we'll get stronger connections with that. So that just came up last week, and I thought that was going to be some potential benefits.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I also think that this is fairness. It creates a real fair playing field for everyone who's doing business in Englewood. So appreciate that. So I think you have enough to move it forward to bring it back to us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you all like a break, or do you want to just... Should we take a quick break? Yeah, let's take a quick break. Let's get back by the, I guess, 6:30, which is really 7:30, around there. Maybe 10-minute break.
Oh, somebody's messing with the time. We're going into a time warp.
Workman's comp. You didn't see that. There's one little little snowy bits, but that was like once, and it was just like for a second. Otherwise, it was like, no, it's been more confined so far all the time. I think there was like the number of.
When I first started, didn't we used to have at least 8? Or is it always been 7?
I think it'll be a fun issue.
Well, I think the pucks we have more, but
We can mix them.
yeah, I don't want to mix them.
Okay. Add issues?
Why not?
No. Anyway, I ordered the encoder.
Oh, okay.
It's $1,000.
$1,000.
Done.
Okay. I have a feeling.
I'll just charge it to you.
Yeah, whatever we gotta do at this point.
0201. Yeah, 020201.
Oh, he knows exactly where to
Yeah.
charge it. Right on.
So I used to charge Murphy stuff.
I think that's the problem, is you're trying to end a meeting, and then you're in conflict.
Yeah.
I wonder too.
So,
It's like crossing.
Because when we do individual meetings, we don't run into
test
the
it, we go
issue.
start, stop, good, start, stop, good.
Yeah.
Great, everything worked?
I did, but unfortunately they're on back order, so I don't know when it's going to get here.
Okay.
So we're just going to have to try to deal with it.
Yeah. That's all we can do. And maybe we audio record this and just live stream and video. That's the one that people seem to really, we need like to be able to hear this information. When the encoder gets here.
I think you'll be fine. You just have to make sure that you, as soon as the meeting ends, shut it off.
Like fully.
Shut it down completely. Yeah.
And don't even, and I think
Do
don't,
nothing.
and don't even create the other event until everything's completely wound down.
Yeah, give it
Then
a couple
create
minutes,
an event.
breathe, let everyone transition over. You got a solid 5. Do nothing, 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 nothing. As soon as they assemble and they get ready, start. It'll buy you some time and hopefully
That's what I think too.
for now.
Okay, I don't think there's any more projectors or.
Yeah, if I could turn it off, I'll turn it
Yeah.
off. You're not baking over there.
No, I'm fine.
I know, mine too. I love a drive.
Oh, it's fine. It's only 6:30 by the clock, right?
I know, it just feels so. Our bodies aren't caught up yet.
Until when it gets to 3 foot, that's a lot. That has happened in March before.
I remember what was it, the storm of '07?
Yes.
Somewhere around there, it was like '07, '09,
That was
something like that.
bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. It was 2 feet, it wasn't 3 feet, but. And I think we had another blizzard like after that too,
We
didn't we?
did. I don't remember what year.
But that was the year that we kind of set a record where there was continuous days with snow on the ground at Stapleton, which was 60-something days or
I
just a
believe that.
ridiculous year. I didn't see my lawn for all winter, so.
So is Wednesday
Yeah, I mean,
projected to be
it's
pretty bad?
so it's really, oh, it is?
Yeah,
really
I
weird
just
because
Going
heard
into
that.
Thursday.
The height
So it starts Wednesday,
2
into
days in
Thursday.
advance
Actual blizzard.
are, like, they
I
seem
wasn't
to know
paying attention.
exactly
I
what's
better
going on, and I
Check your computer.
Yes.
Work from
just
home.
in case, moved to the morning going into the lunch
Yeah,
hour.
8 to
so
12 inches before ending Thursday afternoon.
Oh, have to go. That's not good. Like,
We're under a winter storm
nothing
watch already.
happened.
When does it start, Othanya?
Starts Wednesday at 12 p.m. But there'll be rain before that.
I get for washing my car.
Oh, it actually says blizzard now.
Yeah. Oh, it is?
Yeah, see, that's what you get.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm bringing this.
Right. It says blizzard.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yes, you do. You have them on? Good time to have them on. All right, we're back for the item number 6, which is the audio and visual update. So City Clerk Stephanie Clark and our IT Director Margaret Brocklander are here to present an update to Council on the audiovisual for the City Council meeting. So I think it's no surprise to any of you. We've been having struggles with this, so Mayor Pro Tem and I asked that we specifically get an update because we got a little bit of an update last week and thought it would be really important for you to hear more, and we might have some input that they'd like from us. So thank you for being here.
Of course. So, we
And
just wanted
yeah,
to.
speak right up to it.
Yeah,
as you
we
know.
wanted to update everybody. Several weeks ago, we started a conversion from who we currently use to live stream and video council meetings and board and commission meetings that use it to the YouTube. And there were several reasons why we went into it. The other vendor that we used, you had to have Flash, and there were several issues. It wasn't super user-friendly. People were having a hard time with it. In the meantime, we were approached by iCompass that they had implemented YouTube as part of that live stream. And so once we really looked into it, Margaret and myself, it was a good thing, and it ultimately is cheaper. It's user-friendly. It's widely used. So it was a good idea. So we've been in the midst of converting over to that, and we've just ran into several glitches, which we did not anticipate, and we are actively working on it. And so there's been a few things, and we've definitely made some updates and changes. We continue to test it, and ultimately what it boils down to is it doesn't like when we have 2 meetings back to back. And so there were some other issues that we had, but we just wanted to kind of address some of that. That's just kind of this right now, but this is a larger issue having to do with equipment and that type of thing. So I've asked Margaret, who really speaks technical language, to really update you on audio and video. Clerks are kind of involved because we run the meetings, but this really is a technical issue. So,
Thank you.
So there's several issues going on, and I know that there's been hiccups for the last several meetings. The issue of converting over to YouTube has caused issues with back-to-back meetings. So we have tested with the city clerk's office over and over and over, and our tests are great. We have no issues. And then the meetings come and we present problems. So we've been working with the vendor, and today we asked them to send us a second encoder, which is basically formatting the video to put it out on YouTube. We think that there's a problem when this meeting is ending, it's not finished decoding before we run over to the next meeting. So we're going to put 2 decoders in and separate these 2 meetings, which should resolve the issues that city clerk's been having. I don't have a timeline on when we're going to be able to get the encoder in place, though. The vendor did say it is on back order. They will get it to us as soon as possible. We seem to be the only city having this issue. Stephanie called the vendor and talked to him, and I think it was Stephanie or Jade, I don't recall. No other city has back-to-back meetings like we do, so they haven't been able to duplicate this problem. So we're going to go with the 2 decoders. We think that'll resolve the problem. That's one of the audiovisual issues. The other issue that I've noticed since I've been here is pass the mic. Drives me crazy. And so I know when Dan was here, he took these handhelds away and he put in the wireless, and those didn't work either. There were frequency issues with those mics, mixing them all up, and so that was causing no audio to be heard on the recordings. We have pulled the wireless mics out. We have had a vendor come in and modify the frequency. Unfortunately, we are limited to just these few handhelds. We do have new mics coming. We are waiting for a firm quote. The quotes are coming in a little higher than we expected, but the system that we're looking at was presented to us by the city clerk. It's a system for meetings just like this. It's a great system that we had never heard of before, and it's within the capabilities. It's probably the best system that we could possibly put in. This is not the best system for this kind of meeting. Taking these mics and putting them away and putting them back, this is really hard on these types of mics. The equipment that also sits over in the cabinet, I have no idea how old it is, but it's definitely end of life. So we're looking at that. We do have a project to upgrade this room, to put a screen in, to put a projector in, to fix the microphones. That is scheduled for this year. The first piece is to fix the audio. Once we get that fixed, then we can put the projector in so you don't have to have it on the table and have someone walk in front of it. We'll put the screen on the wall so it'll automatically project there. So we'll upgrade a lot of the equipment in this room that is more user-friendly to meetings like this. But we don't have it scheduled to finish until the 4th quarter of this year.
All right. You ready for questions? Sure. All right. Councilmember Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. Given, Margaret, you just mentioned that there's a back order of this equipment
The decoder.
Right. And we have really no idea when we may get that?
I'll try to get a firmer date. I don't have a specific date, and they weren't able to give me one.
Okay. So, Mayor, I'm wondering if to solution our meeting challenges between now and when we may get this decoder, maybe we could have our study sessions in the main room, in the council chamber room, just to make it easier for us, for our administrators, certainly for the citizens listening, just until we've at least resolved that bottom line issue for this room.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
Information,
Yeah.
would that fix the issue? Because would you have to pause the study session or end the study session? And then is there a lag between when the next meeting would need to start?
Yeah, you would still need to maintain the 2 separate meeting recordings, even if they were in the same room.
That's different than what I was told. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, I think, is next. Oh, do you have more on that first?
As a temporary solution as well, if we were in the same room, we could run one continuous stream and then splice it to create the 2 meetings as a temporary solution too. So just start it and let it go through all the meetings and then manually splice it is what I was told by Jade we could do if we had to until we're able to really nail down what this is happening. But at least it would be one continuous live stream and both meetings would happen in the same area.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Do we know that the encoder is the problem?
We do not. We believe that's the problem. We have tested several times, and we've never been able to duplicate it. It only happens on Monday nights when there's back-to-back meetings.
So it could be something totally different that's interfering.
It could be, but this will help us eliminate it, and no one has any other suggestions at this time. This is an option that we're going to try and keep trying if this doesn't work.
Okay, and then just one other question. We have been experiencing problems with the recordings, the technical difficulties for a few months now. Does it all go back to when we started working at transferring the system over?
We were having audio issues in this room long before we started this conversion. So that's been long running. This YouTube conversion has only been probably within the last 6 weeks.
Okay.
I don't have the date specifically, but so I don't believe that the audio issues we were having earlier, I believe that was something, I mean, I know that you have been troubleshooting some of that as well.
Yeah, the audio issues are very separate from the video issues that are happening now.
Okay, so was there a need to come to council when we started the transfer? I mean, council wasn't made aware that we were transferring over to YouTube. I mean, all of a sudden, I think one day it just showed up on YouTube. Was there a reason that council was not notified?
No specific reason. Basically, the way to access the video was all the same. There was nothing different. It was just a different vendor that was going to have it that would be able to have more capabilities, closed captioning, for instance, just more user ability. You could, while you were live streaming, you could back it up right then during the meeting, during the live stream, whereas before you had to wait until the video was posted manually the next day, and then you could go back and forth to whatever you needed to see. So there were many reasons, and because accessing the live stream or accessing the video, there was nothing different. And really, we thought, you know, we would get it implemented and then kind of roll it out to you with a big ta-da, like, hey, look what we've done to help troubleshoot some of the problems that citizens are having during live streams or not accessing it on their mobile device, that type of thing. So,
right, I appreciate that. However, I think sometimes the citizens decide that maybe somebody is sabotaging things, and so that created another issue. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Councilmember Berentine.
You talked about the contract for YouTube. How much did that cost us to do that piece?
it was less expensive than the Earth Channel vendor that we were using. I don't have the number off the top of my head.
Is that a contract that should have come before council?
No, it was part of the iCompass.
Yeah, This was a service that they were already paying for through iCompass. There was no change in that part of it. It was a change on the back end. They moved from Earth Channel to YouTube. So the contract that you saw with iCompass is still in place. This is just publishing it.
Okay. Then you said that there were the mics here. Is that budgeted?
Yes,
And
that's a capital project in the IT budget.
so we were already budgeting to switch over the mics that we had just purchased.
We budgeted to put new audio-visual and to upgrade what's in this room.
Okay. Because the old mics weren't around that long, the wireless ones.
No, they weren't.
Okay.
That was supposed to be a temporary fix, and it was not a great fix.
Okay. I don't believe that was ever presented as a temporary fix, but I appreciate you making that clarification. And then the mic problem in here, but we're having more audio or video problem in there.
I'm aware of an audio problem in here. I'm aware of a video problem in council chambers.
Okay. All right. That's
But
what I,
those are
that's what I
separate.
said. I've got it straight then. And then how does this all tie into that we lost all of the accessibility or transparency to access meetings on the website? How does any of this affect that?
I don't know. Have we lost the ability to see meetings?
All of the meetings went down. I'm just trying to get the update.
So Earth Channel, so they have, is who we used before. So all the videos that were captured while we had that vendor had to be migrated over to our YouTube account so that they're all in the same space. So apparently during the migration, the videos went down from Thursday to Sunday. They're all up, they're all there, and they were there, and they hadn't gone down. They had gone down for 2 days.
Well, it was, I mean, there was a warning on the website. That's how people brought it to my attention, was that there was a on the website that you could not access. It was a little bit more than 2 days. And the issue about trying to, that they were all backed up, we got that email, that they had all been backed up and downloaded, that they were saved. I think we got that update last council meeting. And then, but they're all back up now.
Correct.
Okay. And has the problem for the accessibility for the tapes prior to 2016 been resolved? So that they're accessible for people?
Yes, so we put instructions up for people. That is old technology. So there's a statement, IT investigated that, and several browsers several months ago updated their securities. So there's just an extra step you have to go to be able to download it and then play it.
Okay.
And that all those instructions are on the website with those old audio tapes.
Okay.
But again, that's very old technology and it's a little bit degraded, so.
Okay. So are you going to come forward to us with some, if there's any additional monies? Because I am concerned with what the Mayor Pro Tem brought up, that if this is our vendor, that they're working with us to get these things resolved, and whether they have a problem or not with any other community. I mean, I can understand you probably don't have a problem with any other meeting, because there is no other meeting that does what we do here. So you don't have any problem with any other, because we're the only ones who do this. So it's unique even in our situation as well. Are you anticipating that there's going to be a lot more money to kind of resolve this, or are we?
Do I anticipate that I'll need more funding above and beyond what I've already budgeted for this room? I don't think so. I think the budget that we have allocated to upgrade this room is sufficient.
And are we going to get an update then from the original upgrade you were going to do? Are you still going to be able to do that as well? What you originally anticipated in the upgrade, it wasn't my understanding that it was that we were just going to keep doing the audio. So was there anything else we're going to have to put aside instead, or?
No. So what we have planned for this room is to upgrade the audio. That's first and foremost. What we have planned to come in phase 2 is put a projector in, put a screen in, and then upgrade the cameras that we have in this room. Currently, the cameras in this room are analog. So we have great video going to YouTube, but the clarity is not great because the cameras are not digital. So we would upgrade the cameras. And then there's some other equipment in the cabinet over there that we'll need to upgrade. What I have budgeted right now in that project, we believe at this time, all of that will remain within that project, and there'll be no request for additional funding.
All right, thank you very much.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. But the upgrading of this room isn't scheduled until Q4. Is that right? That's what you said?
The audio we're going to get done as soon as we can. We're trying to work with the vendor right now, but the remainder of it will be done in Q4.
Okay. I wonder if in the meantime, and we've talked about this on council before, if we should just do one meeting a night on Monday. We've talked about that some time ago, maybe just doing a study session or just a council meeting. I wonder if that's something we should do in the meantime to make things easier.
Okay, that's a second idea. We have meeting in there for the whole night when it's both meetings, and another idea is not having a study session before the regular meeting. Councilmember Sierra.
Just curious, is there a technical person from the vendor, from iCompass, watching the past few meetings, and will they be watching the one on Monday night?
Yes, so on Monday night, they will be, we're doing the Ring Central, so they can see everything as it's happening. And so, again, this has always been on Tuesday after we have a little bit of a fail, we are on the phone, we spend all week, we do several tests, and then it happens again. But this time they will be part of every step that we do. So we'll be sharing our screen with them so that they can troubleshoot it on their end as well. And then also in the meantime, we've been doing an audio recorder backup just so that if for some reason the live stream doesn't start right away or the video glitches, we have the audio as backup.
And then a second question, do we also have somebody from the city watching the live stream? That is, will they be working or watching the same thing that the vendor is watching?
Yes.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, that we have a lot of people watching that are at home, even from the city, right? Texting you all, I understand, and emailing and trying to give you some idea of what their systems are doing.
And
But-
just a
but
point of
also here.
clarification, the reason why I was asking that I'm concerned that the city employees are watching it from the network, but then we have other people outside of the network that may be experiencing the issue.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
And
So,
we've really appreciated the feedback because sometimes when we're at the meeting and we see what's on our end, we don't know that there's, something's failing. So we have had citizens, texting us or putting it on next door to where we can see it. And so that has been really helpful because we're running the meeting. We're trying to capture motions in seconds. And, so this wasn't, doing audio and video was never a part of our main duty during a meeting. And so we have gotten a lot of citizens trying to help us with that, which we very much appreciate.
that's great. So two ideas have been suggested here. One is not to have a study session before a regular meeting. I would suggest that we have tried that before. Doesn't mean we cannot try it again. I would think that possibly what might have to happen is we agree to go beyond 9 o'clock for a regular study session night and then just come at 7 for the regular meeting. I don't know, but we could try. That's one option. The other option would be to go with both in there. Next week, we're scheduled to have 2. Would we be willing to entertain next week being in there, or would that mess up your study that you're trying to do to see if it works or not?
I think either way is fine.
Okay, well, it would be a complete live streaming all in one is what it sounds like in there, so it wouldn't be cutting off and then adding it in. We certainly could do that for a temporary couple weeks if we needed to.
I think until that second encoder gets here and we can really see if that is the difference, that would be a safe way to do it, is one continuous live stream. But again, nobody wants us to work more than we do, believe me. And we hate that it has had so many glitches and hiccups, and we want to make sure that it's corrected and that we don't have any trouble moving forward. So we will follow your direction on that, whatever works best for you.
Councilmember Berentine.
I'd prefer to have the study session in here, and since the IT person is saying that it's 6 to 1, half dozen of the other, then I would prefer to see how we can get it resolved instead of doing it there, but whatever you guys decide.
Councilmember Sierra, do you want to weigh in on this one way or the other? We're talking about temporary being in there until we get the encoder. That's what we're talking about right now. And this, they don't know, so.
So it would make sense for us to have both meetings in the council chambers as a backup at this moment.
If you had both meetings in the council chambers, you wouldn't have any interruption. There would
Right.
less chance of a problem. You'd have a continuous live stream.
As long as we're able to splice it, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Councilmember Martinez.
I'm fine either way. If we need to have both meetings in there, that works for me. Or if we temporarily just have one meeting at a time, I'm fine with that too. So whatever the group decides.
Councilmember Wink.
I actually really like Member Martinez's suggestion. But I'm really flexible. I just want some temporary solution for us. Of note, you mentioned, Mayor, that the council did try previously to just have one single meeting per Monday session. Was there a reason that that didn't work out that you could speak to quickly?
We just had so much in the study session list to get done, and we
The
could not
content.
get it done. We're a few different people, so perhaps we can do it. I'm not against trying it again. I just know that next week, and this is why I said temporary, Councilmember Barentine, next week we are slotted to be in there with both. And so I think for next week we do it, and both are there. We've got things on our agenda, but perhaps if in the future we try and move things off. I guess I would ask, would you be open to meeting a little bit longer if we have to move to only one night of study session in the meantime?
So I would be willing to try that option of one meeting per evening, if as long as it that decision doesn't push the pipeline of items we need to work on to a state of emergency later on in the year.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to weigh in?
I think that's what happened. We decided not to have study sessions on council meeting nights, and it lasted only a short while because there got to be a lot of information. And so that's why it was changed back. As a matter of fact, we changed the meeting time. Originally, council meetings were at 7:30 in the evening, and we moved it back to 7, in anticipation that we wouldn't meet. So either way is okay. If we need to meet in there temporarily, that'll be fine. But then what if it's not the encoder? Then we're looking for something else, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, then we're looking for something else. I do not like the idea of being in there for a study session just because we don't get to see each other, but I've also been told that we could actually set up the round table in front, but I don't know how you move mics, and it seems like the cameras would all be off again. And so if you have a way to do that, that's fine. I just think it's a little bit more amenable to developing our sense as a group here, rather than all being in a line. But it's preference on my part more than anything else, So thank you for this update. I think the public has been waiting for it. I've been telling some of, at least we know we're trying to work on it. It's not easy. It's got to be frustrating on your end because, people have sent pretty rude stuff out to you and many of us, but I realize they're frustrated. But I appreciate your perseverance with this. We do want to get it settled. And if there needs to be more money, just ask for we need to know what it is, so that we don't keep blocking ourselves from being able to keep track of this all. So it sounds like next week we will go ahead and meet in there all together then for the study and the regular, and see if we can, if it doesn't work, then that's obvious it's not what we think it is. But that we'll just have to see when we get there. Yep. All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. No, thank you very much. Next up is Council Constituent Email Protocol. And this is, I think we brought this up last week a bit, and it's come up again this week with some of the emails that we received. I just want to state for the record, I have never hung up on anybody in my entire life. So I've been hung up on quite a bit in this position. However, I think, it's been funny, every time we've had a new council, we've had to figure this out, and it might be really good. I don't know if there'd be some way to sort of put it in a guidelines policy like a Kells rule or something. I don't know if that makes sense, but let's figure out what are we all expecting each other to do around emails that come to all of us. And in the past, it used to come also through this council thing, all council, and we all got it. I think we all have differing views of what we're doing with it. Some people are just forwarding it to our interim city manager and asking her to deal with it, or actually making it a council request. Others are talking to people directly. Some are calling. Some are doing all of them. So what is our best way, do you think, to answer emails that come both singly and maybe in council request type form that you think you're going to move forward, and then also when it comes to all of us? Thoughts about that, Councilmember Wink?
One thing I don't want to happen, we sort of touched on this in last week's meeting, is that the district-specific council members get the burden of the work. I think someone mentioned District 1 person does District 1. I mean, we have 3 at-large members, and so whatever our decision is, let's make sure we're all sort of supporting each other. Makes it a little trickier, but...
Do you have any ideas about how to share the load?
No, but one thing I have heard now, I think somewhat consistently in my almost 2 years on council, is the district-specific person feeling the responsibility for anything that happens in that district, whereas we're here, the 3 of us. So maybe just I don't know what, but I don't think it should only lie on that individual when we have at-large members, and so I'm sure it'll come out in this discussion. I don't have the full answer, but I do think it shouldn't just be their responsibility, and yeah.
Councilmember Martinez.
I was just going to say, in addition to that, unless the person says their address, we also may not know what district they come from. So I don't know how to address that. And I also don't want each of us to have to respond with 7 different answers to one person either. So I don't exactly know what the best way to handle that is, but I'm glad we're talking about it.
Councilmember Sierra.
Since I'm pulling up the mic. I think this is going to be difficult to figure out in a sense, just because we do want to respond to at least alleviate any concerns. If it's an operational issue, though, I think it is something that we may have to just push the city manager, or if we know the department that it's supposed to go to, forward it on to that person. But do we then respond and say, I forwarded your email to so-and-so? So expect a call or a response from them. That would be one way to do it, but in terms of, I do get a lot of emails just with suggestions or just something that they like to see. In that case, I'm trying to think if any of them are actually just to us as council, but the fact that you mentioned knowing where they're located would be a big issue. So I think just operational, I think that may be the easiest fix in terms of just that goes to the city manager or that goes to somebody that we're designated within the city. So that would be one way to get a response to at least a subset of the emails that we get.
Interim city manager, could I ask your sort of perspective on this? Because you've just freshly come into this, probably get more emails than you've ever had in your entire life. And
Well, truly.
so what kind of perspective do you bring in terms of the load? And
I mean, we answer a great deal of constituent emails directly. I mean, I will receive some, department directors receive them directly, and those we try to answer appropriately. We don't always include city council in the response if you weren't included in the original email, or it's, just as you say, I'm a council member, say, or an operational issue. The question that arises for me are the emails that are sent to all of you and include the city clerk and the city attorney or a variety of people. So who is accountable to answer at that point? I certainly, or any city manager, would not want to speak for council with the response. So to me, that's kind of where there's some uncertainty, and I think some clarity would be very helpful for me in that score.
Yeah. Different ways we can handle it. Mayor Pro Tem or Member Barentine, do you want to speak to this at all?
Because it goes to all of council, I think the city attorney has made us all nervous enough about trying to answer anything back and try and give other people any kind of information that we can't take an email that's gone to all of council and start telling all of council what we've done. That's not the appropriate use for the email then. So I generally call them and get more information and talk to them personally. I think there are times when they email us individually that they're expecting some courtesy, and they're entitled to some anonymity on some issues if they want to talk to a council person. But we don't want to be starting to send emails out to all the council that somebody's done something. So I don't really know how you can address that. I mean, you want people to be heard and be respectful of them. I mean, I think that a lot of that's taken care of by like having a scheduled town hall, like coffee, so that they know a time that they can come talk to you, or maybe another email if they don't want to go straight through the city. But I don't have any problem just contacting people directly and having the conversation with them, regardless of what district they're in or what's going on. The issues of the city are the issues of the city. So I don't know how we would assign things or do that. So good luck. I'm pretty comfortable with the way I'm doing it right now. So
Mayor Pro Tem?
A lot of times when we all get an email, I will actually call someone, especially if they leave their telephone number. I call and talk to them to try to find out what the issue is that they're dealing with. I agree it's a very difficult thing to do, and sometimes I've had to talk to people several times to figure out what the bottom line is. I mean, what the original complaint was may not have been what the bottom line is. And I think I guess when they email all of council and the city manager and the city attorney, if it's obvious in the email that there's a department that could address the problem, then I think you send it to the department. Sometimes the emails are about the fact that they didn't get the answers from the department that they needed. So trying to figure that out, this is a difficult issue, especially when council members are put in a position where we can't direct staff. I mean, there was an email, no, I think this was a text, this was not an email, about a council member directing this citizen's complaints to the code enforcement department, and code is doing nothing. So I don't know how we deal with that. I don't know how we fix that as a council, because we've been talking about that, and we asked for input to come back from the code department, and it's status quo. So I think those are the times that citizens get frustrated, when they fall between the cracks and their complaints are not heard. And I think sometimes I tend to, matter of fact, I would get upset when I didn't have answers. When I call somebody, and I guarantee you, when I get a bill that's not right, I call them. And I've had to learn how to temper myself, because my goal is I want my problem solved. And so I think that we as council members need to figure out how we can solve the constituents' problems. And if we don't do that, we may not be sitting here next time, because I don't know. Anyway, I generally call people because it's just easier to have phone calls. And so,
So I've heard that others call too, I think. I do. I think many of us do that, make phone calls. I don't know why you're laughing, Councilmember Parentine, but anyway, I want to ask City Attorney a question.
I apologize, Mayor.
Oh, I thought maybe I said something that maybe you didn't think was.
I wasn't laughing, you misinterpreted it.
Okay,
and
great.
I don't know why you called that out, but I wanted to clarify that.
Great, good, thank you. The question about whether people should respond to email at all has come up. I know that some people have said that their attorneys have told them to try not to email very much at all, and that can limit us too. Is there some sort of a rule of thumb that we might just be clear about so that we don't get ourselves into trouble? I mean, obviously, we're not supposed to be emailing all of us and all at once. We've made that pretty clear. That's not the issue anymore, I hope.
The City Attorneys Association talks about this issue all the time because of the amount of litigation that comes out of text and email. There are people out there who their entire life seems to be focused on digging into people's email and finding the one word that can be the basis of a lawsuit. So it's something that is talked about perpetually, and I'm sure that as you visit with other members of city councils across the state, other mayors, they're hearing from their city attorneys to be incredibly restrictive. I work with the council I have, and you guys do not want to be restrictive. What you want to know is where are the lines, and then you make decisions about whether or not you're going to cross them, and you're independently responsible for that. So that's the relationship we've set up. At this point, responding to a constituent, if each of the 7 of you respond to every constituent, the real concern is that they come out with 7 emails saying, well, you all agreed with me, so when this issue comes up, you've already said in writing this is how you're going to vote. You're going to vote in favor of my issue or my whatever. So that is one of the reasons why you're hearing from the mayors and other city council members, you shouldn't all respond to every email because it could be interpreted as a vote, and you'd be held to that. So that's an issue. One of the things over the last 2 years that I've harped on, and I've heard a couple of council members tonight even comment on the fact, is you have to be careful that email communications do not violate CORA, which would be, well, CORA is not actually my biggest concern, violate COMA. If too many of you are participating in a stream of conversation, basically more than 2 of you are participating in any stream of conversation, it could very well rise to the level of a meeting if what you're discussing is the business of the city. So 3 of you participating is a problem. And when you brought this issue up, I was glad that you brought it up because you're all sitting out there blind and nobody wants to leave constituents not responded to, but if 3 of you do and you're all responding on an issue, have you in fact inadvertently participated in a meeting? So it puts you in a terrible position. I think that you do need to develop a policy, and it does. This is the kind of thing that does need to go into the policy manual. It would be interesting to research what other cities are doing and seeing if pieces of what other cities are doing might be workable for this city. I don't guarantee it. Every city has its own personality, but you want to respond to all of your constituents, and you don't want to create legal problems. So it's a fine line, and that's the best I could offer is to go out and pull in 5 or 10 of the existing policies.
That would be really helpful. I did try and call a couple of mayors who were out of town, and I think NLC, I don't know. They said they're in DC. I thought must be NLC week. I don't know. That would be really helpful to get a couple of other perspectives on it. In the meantime, I want to make sure that, especially those that go out to everybody, that at least I have tended to respond when it's someone in my district. I always try and respond, and oftentimes it's a phone call. I have had people email me from other districts separately, just me, partly because they think the mayor has a different role, and I've dealt with those. Or they haven't gotten something that they wanted, and they didn't like the answer their council member gave, and I may call them to find out where's the disconnect, and often they may misunderstand what they've been told, or they need to have one more follow-up. There was one in particular about traffic last summer, and it went on several times, and I think we finally got them a traffic trailer thing, but for speeding. So I guess if we could decide how many of us will at least say we received your email, I think that's what I've gotten feedback. They don't like it that that all of us don't say I received your email, but I'm not sure. And that would be one by one by one. That would be fine for us to do, right?
If what you're saying is I received your email, you haven't given any indication of what a future vote might involve or how you resolve an issue. So I think that would be fine.
Okay. I think people don't understand the constraints some of us feel like we're under, and I know we might have varying degrees. I never worried about it 6 years ago, but all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, I've responded to a lot of stuff in the past, but most of the time I call them because email is just so flat and getting exactly the full story, and often you do, as Mayor Pro Tem pointed out, find out something else going on. So I'm glad if I get any to all of us. I'm fine with saying I've received your email, and and then perhaps what's the next step we might take, because it seems like if it's in my district, I will definitely, if it's something that needs to be a council request and any kind of code violations would come to that right away for me. That's what I think right away, and then we need to follow up on what the impact is of that code violation, or what code I guess accusation of a violation is. Mayor Pro Tem.
I was just going to solve Councilmember Wink's problem. The three of us are at large. We can contact everybody. I'm not sure that would be a wise idea.
So are you talking about calling everyone who actually emails, or acknowledging by email that you received it?
Well, it's not that we're limited by the district, if
Right.
we could tell. That's all I was saying. I was just being a little bit flippant.
Facetious. Councilmember Sierra.
No, I was going to say I'm fine with also responding, received, also just so everybody knows. I'm not trying to be curt when I do that. It's just I will respond and just say I received the email, because I do read every single email that comes to me. And whether or not I respond or not, you know, I like to get the full perspective of, you know, all the constituents, whether we agree or disagree on the issues, not really the concern, but I do read every email, and if they're fine with that, or if we decide that we're fine just saying I received the email, know that it's not because, or know that I'm not being curt in that type of response to you. So,
Councilmember Bernstein.
I appreciate that you're trying to resolve this issue, but I'm not in agreement with some policy that we just send them a thing that says I have received it. If I contact them or phone call, I don't want some policy that we've got 800 emails out there to just responding to people like that. I'm not comfortable with doing that just to say, to set a policy like that. I just am not comfortable with that. So however you guys all want to handle it, I just don't want to set a policy that every time we get an email, we go, I have received it. I'm just not comfortable with that, so.
Yeah, well, the couple of the phone calls I got were that I just at least want to know you received it. So, and I do that in my work life too. I'd say I've received your email, and take, you know, it's being taken in, or I don't even say much more. It's I got it. We could ask, could do it. Well, anyway, interim city manager.
Well, I'm at the risk of, you know, burdening our staff. If we get one of those general emails to everybody, I am more than happy to say, if Councilmember Wink, for instance, says, would you answer this as a council request? And that we have a good process for that. We can capture the question, and then I can legitimately respond to all of council, and the constituent would know what the answer is too. We'd include them in that. Because I think, you know, that may be a way to answer some of those questions. Not all of them, but some of them. Thank you.
Interim city manager, oh, really? That was that?
Magic touch.
That was weird. Your light is on though, right? So
yeah.
Weird. It's never done that before. Not really. I'm being facetious. I often send things to you to ask if a department will follow up. Usually I have the person on it too to say I'm responding to you with interim city manager on here to do a follow-up with the council request for it. Is that helpful? Is that burdensome? Is it too much? I don't know if all of us are doing that, or if
Frankly,
if
I think
comes and goes.
I think it clarifies the issue if you say, I would like this to be a council request, because then we have a way to track the answers.
Okay.
And get back. I mean, not everything should be a council request if it's a more general, but if it's appropriate, please consider it.
Okay, great. I think that's one real good way to do it, is to send, reply to the person if you see that, and include her in that then, and not the rest of us. There are some times where people just want to vent, and that's really what it is. I don't see that as something that would be necessarily a council request, but maybe a phone call or something else. All right, so let's do a little research further, but at least at this point, we've had a conversation. We can be sensitive about what we're doing, and maybe none of it will change for any of us, but at least we kind of know what everybody's doing. Thank you. Councilmember Sierra.
Actually, maybe just a council request, but a lot gets caught by the junk mail and Minecaster. And so there are times where I don't see the email because it's stuck behind the filter. So is there a reason why some Gmail accounts do come in but not others? And I think I've noticed that also people that have gotten through before then get caught by the Minecaster. So I'm just kind of curious about why that is, especially since we're a public entity. The emails that we're going to get are going to be coming from, the commercial email accounts. So I guess that's more of a question for Margaret, but I guess a council request in terms of understanding why that is.
I
If
can
there's
follow
an
up
easy answer, yeah.
with IT, because I don't have the answer to that.
Right. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I can answer that question because I had some coming into Mimecast. I didn't know how to unblock it. And so I just met with Sam, and he will tell you exactly how you can unblock those. So now when the emails come up that say, blocked emails, if they're junk email, I just leave them there. If it's something that I want to unblock, then I can go in. However, there was one that came in the Mimecast last week, and I went into Mimecast and I couldn't find it. And so when I was over here, I talked to Jeremy, and then I forwarded that one that was blocked, and it was a reply all thing. So it had gone to several people, and so an individual couldn't unblock it. I got the notice that it was there, and so Jeremy unblocked it for me. So anyway, if you just talk to IT, they can help you address that.
Well, just to jump in there, I did follow the instructions because I believe Sam provided me a printout, or maybe it was Margaret, of how to unblock it for future emails. I don't know for sure if after I did that somebody still showed up under the block. So, but I'm just curious about that entire process overall. So,
Councilmember Barentine.
In spite of what the Mayor Pro Tem said, I would like to know why certain ones, to his original question, I am confused that it will pick up one and the same person can email from the same account and it will go in there. And I would like to know why that happens, because I don't want to go through the extra step of having to do it, and you don't always see them as you're going through because it just goes into that one account and you got to click on that. So it's just extra steps. So if there's a way to resolve that, that would be good. So I think your original question, go get help from IT as well, but I think your original question is worthwhile because it's a lot more work to go do that, and you can miss some stuff with that. And I'm kind of curious why that happens too. I had 2 of them this week where they had sent stuff the same week and it went through and then got caught in another. So it doesn't make sense to me. So, and to assume that it's always that, because at first I was just deleting them, go, oh, that's just spam, and wasn't looking in there to see that until the mayor brought that up. So the more we can stop from going in there, the better off everybody is. So I appreciate you doing that. Thanks for asking the question too.
Thank you. Unblocking them is one issue, but figuring out why they're going in there all the time. And it's on and off. My server in my work setting is like that too, so I know it's partly just the way IT stuff works, but it'd be nice to know. I also have a question because a couple constituents in my district and others have asked if we forward our emails all the time, if we're answering from other email addresses rather than the city. Is anybody doing that? Where you just automatically have it forwarded to your personal email and that's what you answer from? Or are we all answering from the city of Englewood? You don't answer from the city of Englewood?
No, I have a difficult time getting to the office. So if I get in there and I see emails that I'm interested in, I forward it to my Gmail account, and that way it's not cluttered up, and I know which ones I want to address. Then I've got it more organized. And my Gmail account is on everything, so it's also part of what I use. But no, and sometimes I don't feel comfortable to answer from there. I don't always. So I try to forward quite a few that I'd be interested in, and take it out of all of the chamber things and the NLC and the CMLs and stuff, so that I've got a little bit better organized in there. And I don't delete anything from the city email, but I don't always forward. Sometimes that's just a convenience for me. I don't do it to answer it from there. Sometimes I just do it to read it from there or think about it from there, or maybe I will answer from there, but I generally, on a regular basis, take what I'm interested in and make sure I forward it to read it again or do something so that I have it on my home computer. It's a little easier for me to, so I can't always access that Office 365 from work either. So.
Councilmember Martinez?
I only use my I only use my Englewood email addresses for Englewood stuff. I don't intermingle it with my personal email at all. I thought we were not supposed to. So if that's not the case, I guess it doesn't matter because I'm not going to do that. So I only use my Englewood email.
Right. Would you like to speak? Councilmember Wink?
You need us all to weigh
No,
in? Oh, okay.
no, I wanted to, because I've been asked whether people are using, the question came up partly because they're wondering about how we have Cora operating then, and can someone, actually Cora, if you're not really answering from the city address, and is it clearly observable by the city to make sure that things that are being said is not, is open?
I can answer that. They did.
So,
and they did get stuff from the Gmail.
Okay. All right. It's a practice that's accepted?
Most cities have policies prohibiting it, and the reason is because the city can't track what's going on to guarantee that Cora is being correctly responded to. And it puts the individual council member in a bad situation because it separates them from the city. So if there is a concern that a council member is not responding to Cora to the degree that an individual wants them to, they go after that council member individually, separate from the city, because they want that individual's private email accounts. And my issue is, if they do a Cora through your private email account, I think that there is a very good possibility that they could get information that is nobody's business. That's your private email. So I really discourage you from using private email accounts. It's been a huge issue in several other cities. If you've been following the newspaper in the last 2 years, several lawsuits against individual council members in those cities, and so they've just shut it down with, if you're going to do constituent responses, that needs to go through the city's email. But again, those cities have made those policies, and that has been their decision. How you guys want to handle it, you handle it. My best legal advice is do not use your personal email, or if you do use a personal email, if you decide that that's something you want to do for whatever reason, have your personal one that is Joe Smith at Google, and this is for my family and friends, and have another one that's Joe Smith council member at Google, so that if you are sued as an individual, there won't be issues about your private email, the emails from your doctor or your kids or whatever. So that's my best legal advice, and it's your choice to take it or not.
All right. No further comments. I think we'll end this discussion and come back when we get a little bit more about perhaps some way other cities do it that could be more helpful to the citizens at large that are asking questions. Next up is council members' choice. Who would like to start us out? Councilmember Barentine.
We had the fire marshal here, and she acknowledged that she was placed in the position along with Tim Englert to do the role of the emergency manager. I asked for their action report, which should have been done to let us know what those two people who were put in that position did, and I don't even see it on the council member request list, so if we could go ahead and get that, I would appreciate it.
I could respond by saying I think it has been on the council request list in the past. There is not a single report that provides that information. I will investigate, however, and see what we can find.
I believe from the response, because the other concern was that we've mixed up a specific person being assigned or a specific job being the emergency manager, with that we have people that are assigned the duties of the emergency manager and always have. It would be wholly irresponsible of us not to have somebody taking that position. I was very grateful to be able to have Laura Herblin acknowledge that we actually have somebody in that position. The city is not without that. That would be irresponsible. But it's my understanding that they're supposed to write, that position is supposed to write a report. We actually had a grant before, I believe her name was Rose or something like that. We had an emergency operation plan done partially through a grant, and I need to get a copy of that, and when that was implemented by council, when we voted on that. So if we could get that and the information from the two people that were the emergency managers, and if they want to come here and say that they did not write any report, do that an action report, which I believe is part of their job, then I would like them to come here and tell me they didn't do it. Thank you.
Councilmember Sierra.
Just one tonight. So we're going to be discussing the alleys a week from tomorrow, or at least I am, with Chief Building Officer or Official, Karen Montanez, Director Brad Power, and also Director D. Andry. So it all started with just conversations within the city, opened it up to the entire city because there's obviously issues with the conditions of the alley, so we'll just have a discussion from 5 to 7 in Hampton Hall here on this floor a week from tomorrow.
So is that posted, or can it be posted? Because are there three of us coming? I will be out of town that night. I was so sad because I really want to be there, but I will not be here. Or is anybody else planning to go that evening? So we need to post it. No, it's your forum. I guess you're fine.
Well, actually, I had that conversation with the interim city manager about whether or not I need to post something like that, and since it is my meeting, and city has never done this before, where it's just an individual meeting for a council member. So
yeah, if others are going to come, it's best to post it. So that's why I was asking. So it looks like a point of information. Go ahead.
Is it going to be recorded?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, because Councilmember Gillett did that. I mean, they had Hampton Hall, and he had staff talk. He didn't really present anything. He just had staff. I don't know if that's directing staff or not. I'm not sure how that works, but if you're going to be having the presentation from staff, and they're going to be answering questions and providing information about what's going to happen, don't we kind of get into a policy thing where we might want some documentation of it? I mean, I would hate to come back to council and have somebody say, I went to Sierra's meeting and DeAndrew said, we're going to do this, or this is how we're going to handle it, or whatever, so I'm not sure.
I would say that council members have often invited city staff to their forums all over the place, and people might come and say, hey, well, I heard this at this, that's fine, and we don't have to, it's not a formal meeting.
We have so many of them come coming that I was just a little concerned about that, how we were going to document that, because if there's some kind of resolution or something, it seems as if it's kind of directing those employees or what's going on with that. I'm not sure how you want to handle that.
City Attorney, is there any regulation around that that have to be posted, or unless there's 3 of us that we know are going to go? Okay.
And I would say I can instruct staff. I mean, this is not a decision-making. This is providing information and answering questions. So it wouldn't be an opportunity to direct staff at all. And I think if we need to be clear about that, it would help.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
I actually have a couple of things, and some of this is around alleys. Some of it is because people, this involves the alley in the 4600 block between Acoma and Bannock. There is a house, I believe, when I was out there when Calibre came and met with a few of the residents, and I was standing behind this house on Acoma, that there was trash. One of the trash trucks drove up at the time, and the trash company said, those people do not have trash pickup. They put it out there hoping that one of the trash companies will pick up the trash. The individual that talked to me has been complaining to code enforcement. Code enforcement is not coming out. So if I can send you the address, if you would check on that address and find out if code can take care of the trash in the alley, because there's rodents. I mean, the squirrels are digging into the trash and strewing it all over. And along the lines of the alley complaint also, I got a letter from my trash company today. This letter does not impact me because we do not have an alley, but it really bothers me a lot. It says, "Dear valued customer, after careful consideration and feedback from both our employees and Inglewood residents, we have made the decision to change alleyway waste and recycling service in Inglewood to curbside service. This decision was not made lightly. Many factors contributed to this decision, including alley width, alley entry and exit access, alley encroachment by homes, building, fences, brush, and trees, alleyway driving surface condition. This change will allow us to provide the safest and most reliable waste recycling service possible." The thing that frustrates me about this letter is the city was built with alleys for the one reason, to have trash pickup in the alleys. And this problem has come up that code enforcement is not enforcing the code, and that is creating a lot of the problems in the alleys. Personally, I think if they don't want to pick up in the alley, then they don't have to do business in the city of Inglewood, because that is the way that we designed it. And I think that we need to make that clear. We have people living on streets where they have retaining walls. They have alley access, but they're going to have to take their trash cans down the front of the retaining wall on their street. I think it's problematic, and I think it's something that we need to deal with. And the alleys are something that we need to deal with. So those two things. I want to give an update on the ACE committee. The last meeting was really amazing. There were a couple businesses that came and talked to the ACE committee about the process of starting a business in the city of Inglewood, and I think they have some great ideas of issues that need to be addressed in the city. Neither of these businesses had attitudes or issues, but just what they laid out made me realize that there is process problems in the business department, which needs to be straightened out. So I was excited about that, and ACE committee getting feedback on that. There was also a business teacher. Jason White had talked to one of the business teachers at the high school, and they suggested that perhaps the ACE committee would have a youth member